Good morning, everyone. Yeah, good morning, all. Uh, Today being the last day, it is going to be lot of assorted topics. So I don't want to give you the whole list of what we are going to do. So some of them are going to be exam objectives, some of them are going to be projectives, and then after that, I've not compiled all the projectives, but whatever extra things or whatever I think that, okay, this also will help you in your projects, I'll be sharing. I'll be uploading it on the Google Drive periodically. So let's get started. Here, everyone knows we had started looking at Spring Security and completed one implementation in memory authentication, and we are shifting to DAO-based authentication. So after completing that, I want to take first highest priority, some of the pending core Java topics. So reflection, JVM architecture cloning, and NIO. I'm just going to tell you I'll give you a lot of help material or reading material, but we will cover it basically at a overview level. So just a second now. Right. So we'll do that, and then I will cover some of the J2E Advanced Java exam topics, and we'll continue. So instead of spending time like that, let's start with the revision of Spring Security and the implementation. So here, I don't want you. Okay, what I'll do is I'll simply refactor it into today's date. Just a second. So day 21, Spring. You don't have to change anything. I'm just refactoring this demo into day 22. And we will first revise whatever we said or whatever we are going to do, and then we'll continue there. Okay, so here what we are talking about is the Spring Security. So here, as you know, Spring Security is a very, very important addition or valuable addition to your project, because you cannot generally, let it be Java, let it be .NET, let it be any backend, you have to secure the web application. So of course, Java being our technology, I'm showing you the professional standard, de facto standard. That is how the Spring Security calls it. The ultimate standard in industry is Spring Security. And it does not even not only take care of your authentication authorization, it supplies you with the default protection against so many common attacks, including session stealing, that is session fixation, CSRF, the protection against SQL injection, and many more. So because of that, you are starting with, or we are learning Spring Security. So just a second. Before I forget, I'll just even update it so that later it should not cause us any problems. Okay, so here I have given you a lot of ready this help. I will just compile them properly and send it to you. So let me just refer to the diagrams. It is the fastest way or easiest way to get started. So let me ask you, what is the entry point? Okay, let me say this properly. Let's revise quickly with your quick answers. Till the time we did not add any Spring Security jar, your application, web application, all endpoints are protected or unprotected. Simple question, simple answer. They are by default all unprotected. Any user can access it without any the way we had written. We have not added our own authentication authorization. They were all unprotected. But the moment you added one starter, rather two starters, one is the Spring Boot starter security, other one is for the tester. The moment you added the Spring security related starter, all the endpoints were protected or unprotected, or some of them protected. What is it? 100% of them were protected. Everyone remembers the observation? So if people ask you, what is the entry point? What is the entry point to Spring security. So before I ask you that entry point and all, understand that Spring security is just one of the additional module, additional project supported in Spring ecosystem, or you can say Spring community. You have seen Spring Web MVC, you have seen Spring ORM integration. Today, I'm going to tell you something about Spring JDBC integration. So likewise, this is an additional project. But now let me ask you, this securing web applications or adding the security, including authentication, authorization, and protection against the common attacks, is this the part of your core request handling, or is it a cross-cutting concern? Now you know the jargon. Yesterday we have spent a lot of time in AOP. I said security is a part of request handling or a cross-cutting concern. Of course, it is a cross-cutting concern. Means what? This is the repetitive task which you will require only in a particular web application or across all the web applications. I mean, in all the web applications, all the web applications. So would you like to add this security logic, including all these three things, authentication, authorization, and guarding, guarding the, giving you the protection? Would you like to tightly couple it with the dispatcher servlet, which is the entry point of Spring MVC web application, or would you like to keep it separately? Separate or tightly coupled? Separation, you have learned all over so many days in our core Java as well as advanced Java, is the key to success. So, okay, so we said like Spring security will be separate. But like I discussed AOP, aspect-oriented programming, would you like your dispatcher servlet to call the security logic every time the request comes in, or would you like to get it called automatically? Automatically or specifically called? So when you say automatically, who is managing it? Of course, Spring Security Framework. And the backend is, of course, Spring Container. Are you getting this? So security, transaction management, and controller advice are the, exception handling, I meant, are all the standard cross-cutting concerns, which are which are built-in concerns, or which are built-in aspects whose solutions have been supplied by the Spring framework. So we have spent a lot of time in writing global exception handling. That is where you understood the recurring task. Recurring means a repetitive task in form of exception handling. So we extracted all exception handling and put it in a global exception handler. From the DAO layer, we pulled out all the transaction management code and put it in a transactional concern, which was one annotation @transactional. And now I'm talking about adding the security concern or adding the security aspect or cross-cutting concern to your otherwise non-secure Spring application. So where is the Spring security logic added? Is it added in dispatcher servlet or elsewhere? Answer that. Where is the Spring security logic added? 100% not in dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet is not affected. So you know the word, this thing, what is it called? Advice. So security is the advice provided by Spring Security Framework to your Web MVC framework, starting with dispatcher servlet. So when you say elsewhere, of course it is an aspect, agreed. But where are these aspects? Where is this cross-cutting concern stored? So people, I'm trying to ask you, trying to tell you, people ask you, what brings in security? What brings that security logic? Answer is filter chain. Okay, so aspect class is a separate thing. It is a cross-cutting concern brought in using filter chain. So the next question people ask you, what is a filter? It's a servlet API. Okay, let me put it properly. It's a dynamic web component whose life cycle is managed by the by the web container. So which two other web components you know? You know servlets, you know JSPs, and the third dynamic web component is a filter. But then you'll say, what is the difference between a servlet and a filter? Servlet, what is it we used to write at the top of the servlet? Annotation @web servlet. and something like, let's say, some URL pattern. So let's say /register or /login. So servlets are typically responding to one URL pattern, whereas filters, because they are for supplying cross-cutting concerns or they act as an interceptor, filters are applied or activated to the to multiple requests. So you remember yesterday I showed you ant matcher pattern, and we had given /admin /star or whatever /customer/star or this, and there we were applying the rule. So what is happening? We are supplying the advice. We were customizing the Spring Security Framework where we were telling those, there is a filter called as authorization filter, that if the client sends a request to, let's say, any URL starting with /admin, check the role and only allow those users with admin role to access the endpoint. So the answer is, guys, security, everything is starting with security filter. I'm sorry, the servlet filter. So you remember yesterday, before I explained this diagram, we had talked about AOP, and I had drawn two concentric circles. The inner circle was a business logic holder, service class, service object, and it was surrounded by a proxy, which was containing the aspect cross-cutting concern. In the very similar manner, before the request can be taken up by the dispatcher servlet, forwarding it to your REST controller or your controller, is it so if when the client sends a request, is it directly taken by the dispatcher servlet and the REST controller? Absolutely not. These are the 15 plus filters which are added automatically the moment you add one single Spring Boot security starter. So when you say filter, it is a servlet component. It's a servlet architecture. It has a very similar servlet lifecycle. The servlet lifecycle was init, service, destroy. So here you have init and destroy same, but the service method is replaced by do filter. So here, unlike servlets, filters can be chained. So client sends a request. It is taken by first security context persistence filter. This is the one which will check, are there any authentication details already stored in the security context holder? CSRF is for common cross-site request forgery attacks. The one, if you send the username and a password in a post type of a request, the request method post, then username password authentication filter is activated. If you have sent, yeah, like yesterday, the inputs credentials using basic auth, you remember the authorization header, basic auth, then basic authentication filter is activated. So the point I'm trying to say is the request will pass through these chain of filters is equal to interceptors, and whichever is the suitable one will be activated. And after the job of, for example, basic authentication filter is done, then after that, it will give the chance, it will call the next filters do filter method. So so this is called as the pre-processing. So after passing through this chain of filters, is it always guaranteed that it will come to your controller? Answer is no. Filters like your around advice. You remember I talked about at around advice. Suppose the authentication fails. Basic authentication filter it is going to call our APIs, the one which we are going to write, our user details surveys, DAO-based authentication, etc. So if the basic authentication filter gets an exception, think smartly. Do you think it will continue with the rest of the filter chain and pass the control to dispatcher servlet and your controller, or will this rest of the filter chain will be skipped? Answer is, of course, it will be skipped, and the immediately response will be sent from this authentication filter to the client, bad credentials, or those 401, 403 types. So it is this, what brings in, what enables the Spring security? Answer is nothing but the filter chain, which is the moment you add a Spring security boot starter is automatically activated. So this is the first thing, and the simple example was browser security filter, just what do you say, analogy. It checks. So security filter means authentication and authorization. If authentication fails, 401, HTTP 401. If authorization fails, forbidden type 403. If both of them work, then only proceed to dispatcher servlet, and from dispatcher servlet, call the controller, REST controller, and proceed ahead. Understanding the concept behind servlet filter, how they work, or how they can alter the flow. That is the main thing. So guys, as you can see, dispatcher servlet is totally unaffected. It is dispatcher servlet contains your core centralized dispatching logic. So in addition to that, you are adding a cross-cutting concern in form of security framework. Okay, so that is our starting point of understanding. Now, when we went ahead, so what we did, so you saw that whenever we added the security jar, everything stopped working. All resources were, what is it called, protected. Anyone wants to tell me why suddenly just by adding the security jar, we are activating the filter chain? Agreed. But why suddenly all the resources became guarded, became protected? I said something yesterday. I don't know how much it reached you. Yeah, are you understanding the question? Why everything stopped working the moment we added the Spring security jar? Understood that filters are activated. But any better answer? Why everything became suddenly protected? That is because by default, Spring Security brings in Web Security Configurer Adapter. I showed you guys that class, and it has got its own configure method with the argument of HTTP security. So what is the default configuration? Okay, let me not talk big. I think I have copied it somewhere. In the security config, we had not added this, but I just gave you the default configuration. See this. So currently I have commented it. So this is the default HTTP security configuration given to you unless and until you override it. You got me? So what is it saying? It authorized all requests. Okay. So all the requests, any request coming to this web application has to be authenticated. Okay. And but for authentication, you require credentials. So when you did not add any credentials, who was generating these credentials automatically? Okay, who was? First answer who, and then I'll ask you which one. Spring container. Okay, let's say Spring Security Framework. Okay, so Spring Security. Now, Spring Security, what was the default username and where was the password? You've seen all of this. Default username was user, and you remember that UUID. Yes, so that universally unique identifier, 128-bit some password was generated. You got this? So the point is here, unless and until we gave that those user credentials, we could not pass through this authentication filter. And as a default, was it supporting your form login for a browser-based client? Answer is yes. Means what? You remember you saw the login page. So who was generating that login page? Client browser or Spring Security? Of course, Spring Security Framework. And which is the default form of authentication it uses is the basic auth, meaning that basic authentication filter gets triggered and that checks, is it containing base 64? It's a part of encoding, base 64 type of encoded username and password, and then accordingly, it will validate you. So let us go faster because again, we have a lot of things to cover. So that was your first step. Then we added that user and password and it worked. But then we said that, okay, we don't want to use this hard-coded user and password. So is there any way where you can add this into application property file? I'm just revising quickly and getting you where we are now. Answer is yes. So what you can do is you can edit your, this was the earlier one. Anyway, I think I've kept it. I don't remember whether I've kept it or removed. So here we added Spring Security credentials. So here you have two properties, Spring Security username, Spring Security user password. And these have to be used for the authentication. But then we said that, okay, hard coding it in a property file. One thing is hard coding part, and the other part is I can supply only one set of user credentials. So what was the next step we did? What was the next step we followed yesterday? Which type of authentication? In-memory authentication or DAO-based authentication? In-memory authentication. So that is the time we had to write our own security configuration class to customize, to override the default settings. So start telling me, what are the compulsory annotations at the class level? So there are two annotations. One is the @ configuration. So you can add the bin definitions and bin annotated methods. And to enable the web security configuration, @ enable web security, both of them are compulsory. And which is the not implicit, which is the compulsory or mandatory superclass, so that you don't have to start from scratch, reinvent the wheel. Web security configurer adapter. And I showed you, this is the method. There is so much of inherent support written in web security configurer adapter. So mainly, which are the two methods we have to override? One for authentication, one for authorization. So here, this is your, okay, this is your final form. This is the one we are going to modify today, but let me go to the earlier one. So if you say, I am showing you the in-memory authentication part. So if you say this here, what is the method? Okay, so you have a concept of authentication manager builder. Open it with the help of picture. Two important pictures you have to keep referring to is the detailed flow, and one is Spring Security architecture. So I'll first explain this because this is a 100-feet view kind of a thing, and then we go to the closer view. So client sends a HTTP request. Is it directly given to dispatcher servlet? Absolutely not. So what is placed in between? Proxy-like thing, a wrapper, which is nothing but a filter chain. So actual filter chain is delegating filter proxy, but those internals are not really required for you. So this is your security filter chain. So this request is going to be intercepted by chain of filters shown earlier. So if you are using basic authentication, or later I'm going to give you a ready-made demo, I'm going to share as a project help, maybe in a day or two, whatever, whenever I get time. So JWT-based authentication, JSON Web Token, that is the standard for REST APIs. So whenever we talk about that, the authentication filter is enabled or it will accept it. If you use the basic authentication filter takes charge. If you use, if you supply the post method, there is something called as username password authentication filter that is in charge. So some filter is activated, and now it starts for authenticating the user. There is an interface called as authentication manager. Authentication manager interface is implemented by the class provider, and the provider or provider manager is going to tag which is the fitting or which is the supported authentication provider. So now let me come to the point. When you use customizations, or rather when you did not use the customization, this authentication provider was not supplied by the programmer. So we were hard coding the details. But the moment you start supplying, this is the method this is your authentication manager builder in-memory authentication. You are telling Spring Security Framework to use not a DAO-based authentication, not the JDBC-based authentication or LDAP-based or what is that, OAuth-based and all that. So nothing. Here we are hard coding the credentials. So what are the three things we are adding here? Username. Initially, you remember we had added the clear text password and the roles which your user can have. If you take the cursor here, it's a varargs. So can one user have multiple roles? Simple question, simple answer. Of course it can. That is why it is a varargs based. So you have roles. But if you remember, when we did not encode the password, and after the client sent a request, did it work or did it not work? before encoding the password. Clear text passwords were working or sending an exception. Of course, it was throwing an exception. So that is when we had to add the password encoder bean. So like I said, in the recent versions of Spring Security, that is Spring Security 5 onwards, there is no default password encoder bean. In the earlier version, we used to have no op. No op means no operation, clear text password encoder. So now, if you want to write, if you want to do any authentication, you better supply a password encoder. So what is this password encoder? It is an interface, service interface for encoding password, and which is a preferred implementation class. There are so many implementation classes, but the preferred one is bcrypt password encoder. And you just take the cursor there and you tell me, is it Spring supplied or is it third party? Bcrypt password encoder. The moment you say OS, and of course it is all security framework, it is Spring supplied, the password encoder. But if you want to look at the complete details, there's a third party vendor, bcrypt. Yesterday I showed you bcryptgenerator.com. So from there also you can generate. But my suggestion is when Spring is giving you such a support, use the Spring supplied version. So once you have this password encoder, okay, sorry, one more thing. What is the significance of this add bean? It's a method level annotation, and it is equivalent to something in our XML world. What is this equivalent to? Add bean annotation, exactly similar to or equivalent to bean tag. Okay, so now answer the question. What will be the bean ID? The bean ID is nothing but the name of the method. So if I translate it, bean ID is equal to password encoder, and class will be here, whatever is the fully qualified name, OSSC, whatever, bcrypt password encoder. And when you don't supply any scope and the lazy in it, it is singleton and eager. So how come this bean will be reflected and added in the Java heap? Since it is a singleton eager right at the application deployment time, that is why I have added the configuration. This is to allow this is to tell the Spring container that this security configuration is going to contain certain beans, start their life cycle. Making sense so far? Understanding each and every word so far? With the revision, that is my main point, you know that. Okay, so going ahead. So what we did is we gave the username, password, and the bcrypt encoded. If you don't want to do this, which is I strongly not this thing. I discourage that. So you can go to that bcrypt generator and remove it. But when you start registering the user, you need a bcrypt encoder bean. So this is the standard technique. Supply the rule. So all this should be clear. And then you can add this. This is just a conjunction. This is for enabling method chaining. So here you can do it in two slices also. You can say auth dot in memory authentication with user stop. And then again, you can say auth dot with user and on. But people generally use the method chaining approach. So what is this? What is it completed now? Authentication or authorization by now? Authentication is over. Customizing authentication is done. Now there is another method inherited from your superclass web security configurer adapter, which takes in the HTTP security as the argument. And this is mainly for customizing authorizations based upon incoming request URLs, based upon roles, etc. So how do you start? You start with the HTTP security instance. Here you are telling, just take the cursor here, allows restricted access depending on some input incoming request and their matching pattern. So this is basically to tell Spring Security, authorize all the requests. This I hope is pretty clear. Already I have given the comment. So if there is anyone who is trying to access /home, I've just given 3 endpoints, home, customer, admin, because here the focus is security, not the business logic. So you can always integrate it to your CMS or your project and test it out. Coming back to the point. So here home means permit all means what should it do? Authentication, authorization, both or neither? I said, if somebody wants to access /home, what should Spring Security Framework do? Authentication, authorization, both or neither? Guys, wake up and answer. Neither is the correct answer. I said permit all. Read this. Specifies that URLs are allowed by anyone without any author. Yesterday we checked it without any authentication authorization. Similarly, guys, see, you are going to write a React frontend. There you will give the login form, sign in. So, or sign up also, login and registration. So those forms will be in the front end. So when you submit the form to the backend, suppose you are using the API endpoint /API/login, or you might have /API/sign-in/API/sign-up. Understanding me? I'll repeat the statement. Stay tuned. I'm talking as your project tip. You have a sign in and sign up on the front end, React front end. So you'll give the forms, you'll generate the forms and all. And when the user wants to register, user will click on sign up. You can have a nav bar and all that. So you take a new user information, and using Axios, you have to call the backend service. So I'm saying, suppose that service endpoint URL is /API/signup. So tell me, should you have any role-based authorization there, or should you permit all? Simple question I'm asking. Login, sign in, and sign up. Of course, permit all. Are you understanding? See, guys, I can't take the big this thing because we develop everything from scratch, but keep it in this. I have another demo, which I'll just, configure it properly and send it to you, JWT based demo. So there I have created sign in and sign up, and both are under permit all. Anyone should be able to sign in to your application, and anyone should be able to sign up with your application. So that way we take a control. And not to worry at all. Here, when you say add matchers, just take a cursor here. Can I add multiple and patterns, multiple URLs or single URL? Answer is multiple. So in short, here you can say, for example, currently it is not there. So /API/sign-in. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Just giving you an example of a real world. Or you have sign up. So all these URLs which will come from the front end, they should be accessible to all. Getting me? Understood my point? Whatever I'm saying? So this becomes so easy. I've told you the customization is the heart of Spring Security Framework. Then, if user is accessing some customer specific resources, who can access it? Any user who is having the authentication, who is having a role as an admin or customer. Okay, I have just configured. I'm not saying this is the way you should. You check your project logic and you decide the roles. And admin, admin, space or admin flow or whatever, admin pages should only be, admin endpoint, should be only accessible to admin. Got it so far? So this is your role-based authorization done in couple of lines. Next one. This is for conjunction and. So again, it gives you the HTTP security argument. And what is it we are doing here? If there is any React actually we want browser. If you want to access it anytime with the browser client, and you want to have this, ready-made login, logout pages, you can use it. In our discussion, where you are planning to develop a full stack, you will not use it. So you can just comment it, and here comment both of the lines. And this is the demo where I'm showing you HTTP basic authentication, basic auth header. And I'm planning to send you a demo when, I don't know, in one of these days, because you won't require it before the exam, the JWT based authentication, where if the user logs in successfully, a JSON web token having a header, having a payload, having a secret password and all that, secret signature will be generated on the server and will be sent to the client. It won't use any session tracking. It won't use any JSession ID cookie. And hereafter, so where this security token, where this JWT token or JOT will be stored In the client side or in the server side? Exactly like JSession ID, but it is now token. Server side. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I'll repeat the flow. I have a diagrams and all, but I have not yet shared. I said the token will be generated on the server side and sent to the client. So where you will have to store it? In React or in, what do you say, Java? Of course, in the front end, React. You can store it under local storage, session storage. That is your decision. And from the next onwards request, do you think a customer will have to log in again or should be required to log in again? Of course not. So you will say we were doing this earlier, but guys, you were remembering the state of the client, conversational state of the client on the server using HTTP session. I'm little distracted, but I need to say all these things for your project help. But here, guys, we are talking about REST API. And the first principle of representational state transfer is statelessness. So if you are anytime adding using HTTP session in your backend, 100% it is a wrong design. Okay. So where should be this session tracking? Keeping the session information, all should be done front end or a backend? 100% front end. Are you getting me? So where will you be storing this JOT token, security token, JWT token, JSON web token in the front end? Are you getting me? So now here onwards, you can add the interceptors. I'm talking about Axios interceptors, and you can add in every ongoing request after the successful login. In addition to request data, what else will be added along with the request? Obvious question, obvious answer. To certify that this is the user. So what will be added in the request? Request header. Of course, the security token. So earlier we were using cookie based JSession ID. The cookie was exchanged as the secure, not as a token, but yeah, to remember the client. Now for security purposes, JWT token. And it will be it will have a secret signature. So even in anyone in between, hacker cannot decrypt it unless and until the hacker has the secret key. So that is the ultimate step. But currently we are in the second step or whatever step where we are not doing JWT based authorization. Here we are doing using the basic auth header. And we already said this. Okay, so let me come back on the track. This was a little detour. So coming back to the point, is this in-memory authentication feasible in the practical world or not feasible? I mean, desirable or not desirable, feasible or not feasible? Of course, not feasible. Where do you want to store all these details? Answer is in the database. Okay, so that is where, now what was the next step we started configuring but did not complete is, replace which part? Authentication, authorization, both or neither? Answer is authentication. Authorization I have done. So I'm sure, I wanted to make you comfortable one by one. So this in-memory authentication will be simply replaced by DAO layer based or DAO based authentication. Okay. So now look at this diagram. Here. Incoming, the request comes from here. Intercepted by authentication filter. In the incoming request, what you will be sending, we are won't use basic auth, later to be replaced by JWT, if you want it in your projects. So here, what will the authentication filter will do? It will create the authentication object. But what will it consist of? Username and a password. What are they called? Credentials. So, but there is a one more flag, one more attribute is authenticated. So currently, when we are in the input flow, what will be the value of is authenticated? True or false? Are you understanding? False. Because where we have done the authentication, got it? So authentication object contains not yet authenticated. So now it comes to the deeper inside the Spring security. So guys, this is where the filter chain triggered the whole thing. Filter chain, authentication filter started the whole flow. So who is in charge of overall authentication? There is an interface called as authentication manager. It has a method, single method, authenticate. So this authentication manager is implemented by a class provider manager. And now that provider manager starts checking, are there any authentication providers? So technically speaking, logically speaking, can there be only one authentication provider, single or multiple? Answer is multiple. But guys, now listen to this. Here, each and every authentication provider has a function, has a method, supports. Again, that supports is a Boolean one. So what will authentication manager do? It will pull. It will start sequentially accessing individual authentication provider. So earlier, which one was returning the supports to be true? When we use that authentication manager builder dot in memory authentication, which was the authentication provider? In memory based. So are we going to continue with in memory? Of course not. So how do you tell Spring Security Framework that now I want a DAO based authentication provider? Here we enter there's a method in authentication manager builder, user detail service. So what is user detail service? Spring supplied core interface, root interface, or whatever you say, basic interface. But unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, has Spring supplied you any of its implementation which will support JPA as well as Spring Data JPA? Answer is no. Is there a JDBC based ready-made authentication provider? 100% yes, but we don't want JDBC. So what is the solution? The solution is you means programmer, has to customize, has to create the implementation of user detail service. So you can think of it as my user detail service or custom user detail service. How many methods are there to implement? A single method. Which is the method there? Load by username. So who is going to, okay, so sorry. So now what is it? Where will be our user details such as username, password, active, email, roles? It will be all on the database. So we are going to do something in a bottoms up manner. So suppose here is the database. Database we will not generate tables. We will create the POJOs. So which will be the POJOs will be creating in 5 minutes? Which POJOs? Only user and a role. And what will be the association? Both of them will be entities. What will be the association between them? One to one, many to many, etc. Many to many. Okay. For simplicity, we'll make it unidirectional. From user, I should be able to access the roles. You can make it bidirectional anytime. But the bidirectional means mapped by and all those things not required. Okay, so coming back to the point. So we will add the two POJOs here, user and a role. We are working in Spring Data JPA. So in the DAO layer, will you have to write the implementation class or only interfaces? Implementation class, guys, Siddharth, we are in Spring Data JPA. So only interfaces. What will be the super interface you will extend from? So for example, I say user repository, role repository. What will be the super interface? JPA repository. Everyone remembers that. Above that, now see this. So we used to write a service layer. So that is where we will have user detail service. I think we have started writing that. Here we will implement load by username. But for contacting database, tell me what will be the, what is it called? A dependency. What will be the dependency of user detail service, guys? Tell me. I want to load the details of user by username. What will be the dependency of user detail service? What is it you will be auto-wiring? Of course, user repository. Very right, Gaurav. So using user repository, we will load the user details. In case of problem, we will throw the authentication exception. You will see that exception and something like username not found. And otherwise, now what is the return type of this load by username? The answer is user details. User detail service is for loading the user details by username, And now the return type of this method in case of success is user details. So is it our interface or Spring Security interface? Spring Security interface. And user details are implemented by a class user, not our user, Spring Security user, but generally, I mean, you can do it in 100 ways. What we generally do is we implement custom user details. And then there are a lot of methods to implement. We will implement all of that and we'll see whether Spring Security understands us and does database-based authentication, or I can say DAO-based authentication. So once this authentication is done successfully, the control comes back to authentication manager. See, everything started by calling the authenticate method. Control comes back. In case of a failure, exception is sent back, and authentication filter does not forward the client to dispatcher, servlet, and REST controllers and rest of the stuff. User gets an exception that 401, 403, depending on authentication failed, authorization failed, etc. But in case of a success, now see this. The authenticate method returns this authentication object. But now, what is that authentication object is holding? Of course, it is holding credentials, but in addition to credentials, it holds the user principal. So this user principal contains the authenticated or validated username, password, roles, security information, each and everything. And now, is authenticated flag, what will it be? True or false? After the successful authentication, of course, it will be true. And this information, guys, is stored in this security context holder. So this information is stored into security context holder so that if the same client sends, this is not remembering the client. There is no, J session ID. Of course, J session ID cookie is currently flowing. With JWT, even that will be disappearing. So the point is, this security context holder holds the authentication object. And this authentication object can be directly used when the same client sends the next request. You saw, it did not have to do the, It did not have to do the authentication again. Select query wasn't getting fired again because of that basic auth header contains base64 encoded username, password, and all that information. It was matched against this authentication object and the user was granted access. So that is what we are going to confirm with a DAO-based layer. So I think you understood something about the flow and the internal Spring Security architecture internals, little bit at least. Okay, so when we go ahead more, you'll understand more. So let's continue now. I've changed the name, I guess. Yeah. So other things are already done. So let me just take you to security config. And how did we replace your in-memory authentication by the DAO-based authentication? Just take a cursor here and you'll know. Adds the authentication based upon custom user detail service. So what is this type of user detail service? It is the Spring supplied interface implementation, our supplied, programmer supplied. Okay, so here we have auto-wired this. So naturally you have to create a bean. Bean means service bean, which implements this. So I think we had stopped at that. So open the service layer, and this is our user details implementation class. And here you are adding at service layer, and this is where you can add the at transactional also, because this is what we'll call the DAO layer. So after we complete the DAO layer, we'll add the additional annotation. So which is the only one single method you have to implement? Load user by username. Take a cursor here. Locates the user based on the username. Later you can replace it by email, anything. And what should this method do? In case of a failure, in case there is no matching username, throw this exception. Otherwise, return the instance of the user details, which we will customize. This is an interface which we will customize by creating custom user details. But since everything is based on the database, pause here, suspend here, and let us come to the, let us create the POJOs and the DAO layer and all, and then complete here. So pause here in the sense, don't continue in the service. I have, okay, we have the POJOs. So start doing, I think I have written it in the yesterday's help regarding Spring Security, so that you know we will be on the same things. Have I given? If I'm not given, then I'll have to. Okay. So how to load user by username is the question. So please follow. Please open regarding Spring Security. I'll quickly explain the POJO layer and we'll work parallelly because I have given you a lot of practice in Hibernate. I hope this will be like a recap. So here okay. Why I insist to call it as a user entity? Any clues? I'm not going to call it as a user. I'm going to give the name of the POJO class as user entity. Anyone wants to tell me reason? Not really, Girish. I can still say it's user. Okay, let's not waste time. Ambiguity. If you say user, there is a org Spring Framework Security Core. I mean, Spring Security Framework supplied user. And everywhere now then you'll have to use the fully qualified name. So simple hack, simple trick is call it as user entity. It will not clash with your Spring Security user class. That is the only thing. So what does this tell you? Many to many. Oh, sorry. I said bidirectional. My mistake. Let's make it from user entity to role, unidirectional, much easier to configure. And here, later I said, like one user, I mean, one role can have multiple users, but currently forget that. So the majority implementations require many to many. I'm just giving you the maximum. Anytime you want to say, I have one role and multiple users, but one user can have only one role, you can configure that. So let's do this fast. We will create a user entity extending from base entity. We'll copy base entity from somewhere. And these are the properties. That's why I was looking for this. So username, email, password is active. So when you register, of course, you'll make it as true. And the roles. Anyone remembers? Okay, I'll forget my question. I mean, discard my question. You tell me what should be the data type of roles. That will tell me whether you remember anything from. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. I said, what should be the data type of roles in user entity? Wrong answer. Diksha, you are closer, but this, okay. Guys, I said one user can have multiple roles. So it will be a collection-based property. And do you remember our tip? What was that? Student and a project. You remember student and a project we had done in detail. One student can be in part of multiple projects, one project can have. And the recommendation from that guy, Thorben Hansen or Jansen, whatever. So he says, he says with, of course, examples that set becomes much easier or other introduces not list, not list. Set is the preferred choice of collection there, where because set can already identify the duplicates. Okay, so what will be the property type here? Set of role. And you will recall all our things. So why don't, and of course, in the role table, role POJO, ID. So extending from base entity. And here you have your enum, where you have role underscore user, role underscore customer, or role underscore whatever I mean. You got me? So pick up this and let's start in a fast manner, finish it fast. So go to the POJOs and let's create a, oh, I'll just first copy that base entity. Just copy the base entity so we don't have to do from scratch. So I'm just checking. Yeah. So this is your base entity. And now let us create a user entity here. Extending from base entity. And here, let me pick up the properties. And you should be able to write a POJO, JPA managed POJOs or Hibernate managed POJO on your own. Private. I'll send you in case you require help. Username. is active types, and this is that association based. So here we are configuring, what we are configuring, user entity, from user entity. So one-sided, unisided, but it is many to many, many to many, the relationship between the role. This is a unidirectional entity to entity, many to many relationship, right? So private set, recall all these things we have said in those 4 or 5 days or whatever days of Hibernate rule, and I can say rules. As per the given king, should you keep it null or should you keep it like empty collection or null? Empty collection. And before that, I'll just say here, create role, create class role. So that is also an entity. So let it also extend from it. So, you will come back to this in a minute. So new, which is the fastest implementation class of set API, a hash set. So all these things done. Those who are not having Lombok should add the constructor, getter, setters, hash code, toString, etc. But toString here is not required. toString will be required in the role. Otherwise, you can use Lombok annotations. So first I will add the JP annotations, which is at entity. Now I have got so many users table, just a second. So here, what we are talking about is show tables. I've got users table. So I'll say something, security users or something. Just create a different table. Don't map it to the earlier one. Otherwise, you'll start getting weird things. So here I'm saying at table name, I'll say secure users. Something. Secure users or something. And then we will have the extents from this is already there. I'll just reduce the sizes. You know all of this. You can see here, username will make it as unique because we are going to load the user details by username. So I'll make the keep it unique. This also I'll make it unique email. And here you can of course add. And you don't have to change the names, Spring Data GPA automatically translates Java style names using the camel casing to database style underscores and all. So we are done here as far as basic properties, at entity, at table. The base entity gives you at ID. So this is fine. Now the main annotation. Got it here? Okay, till you come here, I will add the Lombok annotations. So at the rate, no args. Am I going to require all argument constructor? I'll just do that. And I'm saying at the rate data to add the getters, setters, toString, everything. I mean toString, all the things. Now, if I hope you have finished it. If you don't have Lombok working still, even after, fixing the access, somebody was having yesterday the access permission, Mohit, I guess. So after fixing all that, you can use. Otherwise, instead of these three, generate the default constructor, generate the all argument constructor, getter, setter, toString. Okay, so tell me, are we ready to configure this many to many? Okay, so tell me which annotation. There is a mandatory annotation, otherwise you'll start getting org Hibernate mapping exception. So which is the annotation used required here? Everyone should know this. Of course, at the rate many to many. Okay. At the rate many to many. This is the only one which is, what is it called? Mandatory. But if you write only this much, who will decide the name of the join table and the whatever, the join columns, inverse join column? Hibernate. So if you want to override, which is the additional annotation we add? Join table. You can see specifies the mapping of the association. It is applied to the owning side of the association. So I'm creating user entity itself as on owning side. But since it is a unidirectional, there is no inverse side. And since there is no inverse side, there's no mapped by, there's no orphan removal, nothing required. So join table, and here you can supply the name. So the name is typically, I mean, both the things. So I'll say user roles. Then I have the join column. I said this earlier. So I hope you remember all that. Otherwise, currently today just focus is on Spring Security. So don't waste too much time. So here, the name of the column is here. This is the owning side. So user ID. Okay. And then we will add the inverse join column. Like I said, join columns. Why does one more extra I guess. So inverse join column will be the same annotation and the rate join column, and here the name is role ID because it is the other side. Even though it is not accessible, you should add that. Right? Somewhere I have goofed up. Inverse join column. One more, I guess. No, still it's a problem. Wait a second. Where I messed up? Insert identifier. Add join table. This looks fine. Inverse join column. Add join column. Name equal to this. I don't think it is required really. You can find out my mistake. Enum body. What enum body it is talking about? Something is wrong here. Well, are you finding the mistake? Semicolon. Here the semicolon. There's directly. No, there's a join table. This no. I require this, right? And oh yeah, so sorry. My attention was elsewhere. Thanks, guys. Of course, this is annotation. What is it I'm doing? My bad. So is that it? So we have added many to many, join table, join columns name, and role ID. Okay. So we are set for one side. Now the easier one is the opposite side, which has only the roles. So go over to the other side, role.java, extend, oh sorry, just a second. Just you also check if I forget something. At entity, at table, JPA style, no argument and all is fine. I think we are done. Then we'll see from the table generated, otherwise we'll drop and create it. So now here I have given you a suggestion. This is easier. So all it has is role ID, but because it is related with your Spring Security, when you start adding that enum user role, everything should be prefixed with role underscore admin, role underscore customer, role underscore manager. That way you will. So that is the only thing to be remembered. So here, let's add that. I don't require ID, of course, because it is extending. So all I will have is private enum user role. Oh, and here we'll say create a enum. And here we'll add the annotation in a minute. So just add role underscore. We got to this, right? Customer and role underscore admin. This is the prefix role is required for Spring Security, not otherwise. And here, by default, it adds the ordinal. So we are having the constant name here, enum type.string. Add the other annotations as well. Table. security rules. Is that it? Enumeration and all that. The string length also use. Name will be role, and let's say length equal to 20. And Lombok annotations. No arcs, all arcs, and the data. So, got it? You tell me if I forget something. Admin enum rock. Yeah. You don't have matched with the database. Thanks. Role underscore customer, role underscore admin. Thank you. So I think we are done at the POJO layer. You got it? Or okay, should I send you the POJOs in case you have not done this? Please. 822. This has nothing to do with the security. I mean, this is all our JPA. So accordingly, focus. First, I'm sending you. You don't require base entity. I'll send you user entity. And I'll send you role and the enum user role. Okay, you tell me whenever you finish, I'll continue. We'll continue to the repository layer. That is DAO layer, the layer above POJO. Remove this warning. You can also, just a second. So here, you can get rid of this and make this also Lombok style. So what it is, at the rate no arcs, so that you know there won't be that warning. All arcs. Okay. So once you do this, you will see still that warning appears. Overrides to string generating multiple markers. That is intentional. Yeah, no, it is. I was just checking what the warning is, but it should not affect us. So I have changed the base entity also to write in a Lombok style manner. Can we continue, guys, to the DAO layer? I'll send you this itself in case you want it. You are saying done already. So that base entity earlier which I had copied was non-Lombok. So I just converted into this. Does not matter at all. Lombok is the last priority you should keep because all it does is reduces the code, no concept. Now, anyone wants to tell me in the DAO layer, which repositories we are going to add? One per entity. So which entities we have? User entity and the role entity. So user repo and a role repo. Close all that. Go to DAO layer. Class or an interface? Only interface. And let us call it as user repository and extending from JPA repo, correct? And what will be this replaced by? User entity. Don't say user, that will be your Spring Security user. And as always, we are keeping it. You can also replace it by long, doesn't matter. And just a second, I remember, should not fail and should not waste time. Generated value is already provided. I was just taking that. Okay, so this is done. Now let's create a role repository also. Okay, extending from JPA repository and just change the entity type to role and the ID is still the integer. Done? You tell me done or whenever you're done. Just two repos we have created, all empty so far. You are going to tell me, otherwise I'll wait. This. Okay, one of you are saying done. It doesn't take you that too much time. All you are going to create is user repository and role repository. So I don't think this you require to be sent. Now pause here and open our service layer, custom user detail service implementation, and tell me what is it you are going to, what is it called? What will be the dependency of this service layer? A user repository, correct? So now inject, we had to pause here because we did not have this. So at the rate autowired, user repository. Now, since it is a transaction, I mean database related, typically we want the transactions to begin and end with the service layer. So you can add it. This is not calling some other REST API. So add the transactional annotation. Now, can you tell me, see this authentication filter, that authentication manager is going to call this load user by username and pass the username to it. So anyone wants to tell me, what should I do to get the user details from database from the username? In short, clue is, I don't think you require a clue. What should I add here? Can I use the inherited method or the finder methods or the custom query methods? Finder method is sufficient. Very right. So write a finder method here. So finder method, you know, it has a typical pattern. You can use find by, get by, something like read by, but I don't use it. I use generally find by. Finder method to locate or to load user details by name. So what should be the return type? Anyone wants to answer the return type? Find by username, exactly. What should be the return type? Wrong, wrong. Typical. Okay, user entity will work, but better one, better suggestion, optional. So again, I'm saying, guys, in your project, you can decide with optional or else throw makes it very easy. If you don't use optional and you directly say user entity, you will have to do the null checking. So accordingly, you decide. Optional. This optional will be of the type user entity, correct? And here the naming is strict. So what is the name of the thing we have given? I think username. I'm just confirming so that later we don't have to waste time. So find by username. User repository. Find by, and this has to be camel case. Okay. And here you can have anything. Understood or rather recalled everything. We had written much more complicated than this. So I think you should not have a problem. So now come to the next point. So I think we had come from top down and bottoms up manner, and we have met at the join point, I can say. Okay, we have met at a common point. So now, what is it? Who has to call whose method for which purpose? Invoke DAO's method to what? To get the user details. You know all of this. We have been doing it. Only thing is you are doing it for Spring Security framework. User repo dot find by username. And what is it you are going to pass here? Nothing but the username. Spring Security supplied that authentication manager. You remember that detailed flow somewhere here. When I'm talking about it, this authentication manager authenticate method is going to call load by username by passing the username from the supplied credentials. So one project tip. Suppose you in the form, in the React form, in the front end, basically, you don't want to give username and a password. You want to supply email and a password. I'll repeat it slowly. In the login form, if you don't want to have this username, password, credentials, but you want email and password, can we still do it? Answer is yes. Tell me how. Or okay, tell me what will change. Exactly. Very good. So only the repository layer, repository will change. So we'll simply call it as find by email. And where will you get that email from? So in the basic auth header, the instead of username, you will be in, you end user will send it an email and you will extract it, not you, Spring Security Framework, and will pass it. You can try it out. Okay. So now here, now, when you take a cursor here, this is returning optional. So how do you find whether it is empty or not? Everyone knows it. So, or else true. So now apply your smartness and tell me, what should I add here? Answer is right in front of you, line number 20. What should be the body of or else throw? What should be that? Okay, lambda expression. So empty lambda, I mean zero argument lambda. I'm asking exactly. Are you understanding, guys? So now you are allowed to throw, not allowed. This is an unchecked exception. You are supposed to throw. Read this. Thrown if user details service implementation cannot locate the user by username. That is why, I was preparing you for using all this. So all you have to say is new username not found. Is it our custom exception or is it coming from Spring Security? Of course, it is a Spring Security Spring Security Framework exception, and you can supply the username to give the details. You can add a global exception handler. Now you have a practice of it. So anyway, this won't be actually handled by global exception handler. This is supposed to be handled by your authentication filter or other authentication mechanism. So now the standard question, standard answer. If the control comes here, what does it imply? User details found or not found? So user details found. Understood completely so far? Now comes the next step, the last step. So here, in this case, can I return the user entity as it is? Or do I have to encapsulate it, wrap it in the user details object? Of course, if you say return user entity, as in, oh, I forgot to assign it. Please assign it to the local variable. So what you have got is the user, or you can say user details. Oh, it is so confusing. Let's say user. Now, so now comes the next step. So if you take the cursor here, control space, read. If they have given such a beautiful, what is it called? Documentation. So here, returns, okay, what is it? It's a serializable. Concrete implementation should take care that all these methods are not returning any null. You can read it later. But I got you for something else. So forget this get authorities method. That's the most complex one. We'll come to that last. So here, what it okay, let me come to that last. So tell me, there is a method get password. So what are we going to do, guys? In the next minute, we are going to write our own custom user details class, which is the interface it is going to implement, obviously. JP interface, Spring Security interface, or whatever. Of course, user details, Spring Security, that is why I got you here. And which are the methods you will have to implement? All the methods which are declared here. So my question is, can you find out the password? Of course, yes. We've got that whole user entity details. User entity has a password. Done. Reaching, understanding or not understanding. So we are lifting the details from the database into user entity and putting it in the custom user details object. Can I get the username? Of course, yes. There's a getter and username. Now, there are additional things. Spring Security gives you the flexibility. So we have not added it. But in your project, if you require, I'm saying you don't require it typically, typical observation. So is account non-expired? So what is it we want to do? If the account, your security account, user account is expired, how will the security give you access? So what we will override this, implement it, and what will you return? True or false? Is account non-expired? Is account not expired? What will you return? Not expired is true. So then only it will allow you further. And is account non-locked? Again, the default value is false. So we will return true so that we won't have any problem. Is credentials non-expired? True, not expired. And you remember we have added an active flag that is active and all in user. So we'll take it accordingly, is enabled. So depending on the database value, of course, we are going to set it to true. So it will be true again. Understood all the other methods other than that get authorities. We're going to implement it in a minute. So now focus on the little, I'm not saying complex, but yeah, little involved. So here, guys, user has roles. Roles are nothing but what? Granted authorities. So there is a method for you to implement which can return, or rather which should return collection of. Does everyone remember this syntax from generics? When you say question mark extends granted authority, wait, granted authority is an interface. It's not a class. So anyone wants to tell me what are the legal values, legal generic types of this collection? I'll repeat my question again. First, I'll give you the input. Granted authority is an interface. I'll show you in a minute. So when you say question mark extends granted authority, what can be the type of this collection? Okay, interface, Yogesh, we don't write because yeah, it is normally your answer is correct. The type and its subtypes. I mean, it's a lower bound basically. The granted authority and a subtype. But granted authority is an interface. Can you pass an interface? No. So will you use the word subclass, or which is the word we use for interface and? Do we say subclass? Which one? What is it we say? Subtypes. Okay, better word, specific word, implementation class. Interface and the implementation class. Okay, so in short, what is it you can pass? You can pass any collection. You remember any collection means any set, any list. Okay, and that of what is it? That of any implementation class which implements granted authority. Okay, so granted authority interface has a implementation class, which I'll show you, simple granted authority, and its API and all. So why don't we look at API docs? I've not downloaded it in a jar file. So Google search it. So here you can say Spring Security Granted Authority. Okay, you look at it as API docs. So look for Google search for Spring Security Granted Authority API doc. It will take you to this, or otherwise you can look up from here. As I said, it's a OSSC. This is the main package we will interact with. It has got your authentication manager, providers, auth providers, everything. So coming back to the point, this is an interface. This is an authority granted to authentication object. Means that authentication object will have this authority details. And if you see the implementation class, there are so many. So the one we are going to use is simple granted authority. So tell me, if I say question mark extends granted authority, in its place, can I pass the type of simple granted authority? It's a Boolean question, yes or no. Of course, yes, you guys are already saying subtype. So I just said specifically implementation type. And it does have a very simple constructor. All you have to supply is the name of the role. Okay. So like I told you, this is the only thing which requires little bit of efforts. Everything else is like fine. So let's get started. Here I'm saying return new. I don't have this. We will create it. New. Let's call it as custom user details. And tell me, this is that user details implementation which we will write as the last step, and we are ready to test. So anyone wants to tell me, we don't have it. We will write in a minute. Do you need a constructor here? Do you need to pass any argument or no argument? Because that will tell me how much it is reaching. I'll ask you again. Guys, this class does not exist. In the next minute, we will write custom user details and what you say, which will implement the user details interface. So do you need to pass any argument or no argument? You have to pass an argument. And of course, you have to pass. Where are the details? All the details are in loaded user. So pass it here. And let's create a class which uses this. And since it is all related with Spring Security, you can put it anywhere, but I'm putting it in service layer. And the super class is going to be object. Fine. See, it has already understood because the return type is user details. So OSSC, I mean, it has already identified. It has to implement the user details implementation, user details interface. So I'll wait here. Tell me, you got it? Did the class get created automatically? Done? Okay. So here, since we have given a parameterized constructor, let's add that. So let me add a field here, private user entity user, and let's generate a constructor here. You can again use the Lombok this, but currently I'm using it. So I have given you that. So ignore this method. We'll come to that in a minute. Start doing the other things. So what I want to do, I've got user dot get password. So I'm filling up that user details object, which is required for my Spring Security framework. So this is what name, right? What was that method? I forgot. Get username. Okay, fine. So I have to give the username. But I mean the same coincidence. This is account not expired. See, I told you it is all false. So just change it to true. It's not expired. Is it locked? Non-locked. True. Non-credentials, non-expired. Yes, non-expired. And here you can have user dot is active. So finish the basic methods and we'll focus on the thing. I'll send you whatever is the done thing so far. I'm sending you both the services. We are not finished, about to finish. Custom user details I'll send you, and the other one, custom user details, service implementation. Both I have sent you. You tell me whenever the basic methods are over. I've not written this one. We are going to write this together. So do let me know whenever your basics are done. Okay. So this is worth 5-10 minutes or whatever. I don't know. I don't count. I mean, I can't count time. So let us go slow here. Which is the method you are implementing? Get authorities. What is it supposed to return? Any collection of the type. I already said granted authority implemented by simple get granted authority. So I can return a list. I can return a set of a simple granted authority. But I have a question. Where I have got, I mean, from where to get this? Anyone wants to tell me? How do I find out the authorities are nothing but the roles? I've given you the clue already. So how to find out these roles available to the user? You understand or you don't understand? Role repository. But I'm saying role repository is it really required? So here, see this. I've got a user entity. In user entity, okay, let me ask you, can user entity access the roles? Answer is yes, I can, right? Of course, we'll use role repository later, but let's go step by step. So from user, I can access the roles. Which method? Exactly, user.getRoles. But now pause here. It's a last day thing, so has to be advanced, has to be sizably advanced, suitably advanced. But now let me ask you a question. when you use @many to many, what is the default fetching policy? Lazy or eager? Everyone remembers any to many, always lazy. Means what? When you fire, see this, you got your finder here. Where is that? Here? No, no, no. User repo. So when you have a finder, what will be the query it will fire? Select you from user you. So here, tell me, is this query, is it going to lift the details from user tables, roles table, both or neither? User table only. So what are the solution? You know okay, so you access it directly, you will get a lazy and an exception the moment you say user.get roles. Try this out. Okay, so the point is there are solutions. So tell me, one user, how many maximum roles? Wait a second, I'm looking for my enum. How many maximum roles it can have in my whatever web application? 2. So is the size of many, is the maximum size of many limited to 2? Is it really large or is it less? Small or big? It is less. So in that case, do you remember our simple trick? Simply change the fetching policy to eager. Are you getting me? So that anytime I load the user details, I can get the role details also, and which are so less, so tiny. In my roles table, what is it I'm going to have? If all goes well, it's just a user role, it's just a string. I mean, string form of it, enum. So guys, this is a perfect candidate. This is a perfect case. Where is my user entity? To make the relationship behave in an eager manner. But let me tell you once and time and again, in your projects, if the size of the many, I had given course and student, so size of many was pretty large. So that time don't change it. So I hope you understood why I'm suggesting this. You can have a fetch type of eager. I'll write a comment. Acceptable solution since size of many, that is roles, is so I'll say maximum size. Maximum size of many is 2. So along with the user information, at the most you are loading what? The roles table, and role has just one column, and that is the name of the role. Understood what I said? Clear so far? Okay, so now work on the rest of it. So where we are into custom user details. So now see this, guys. The whole thing, I hope, is coming together nicely. First of all, let me say close and let me open only things which we are acquiring. So we have annotated this method with transactional. That means the transaction manager has already begun the transaction. Okay, so this method is called within a transactional scope, within that session scope. And we are lifting here, because of that fetch type equal to eager, user details, roles details, both or neither. Now, in the change scenario, which details? Both the details. Okay, so now I can happily go to this class and let's see whether, let's form it. So here, start. So what is it we have? Users, not users, sorry, user dot get roles. Got it so far? Will I get a lazy initialization exception because of that unfetched data handling proxy, or will I get the roles? Proxy or no proxy? Fetch data or no fetch data? Unfetched data or fetch data? We'll get rules. But guys, this is what is it? Just take a cursor here and you'll understand. What is it? It is a set of role type of a POJO. And ultimately, we have to map it. I said map. I gave you the clue here. So here you have to map it to collection of granted authorities. So I hope, see, you can always write it in a imperative style, but this is a high time we recall our functional style programming. So here, functional style stream based. So is there any method to convert set of roles into stream? You remember functional streams we learned in core Java. Is there any method to convert the collection to stream? Of course, there's a method stream. So dot stream. Okay. Now I'll put it on different lines for understanding. So what is it you have got here is stream. of the type role. Now I said, but I want, do you want the return type as role or return type as simple granted authority? You want a collection of the type granted authority. So what is it? You remember a mapper function, map. What is map? You know from JavaScript and all that. Map is what? A converter from one type to another. So let us use the mapper function dot map. So here, what it is? It is that mapper function which converts the role to what? Simple granted authority. I told you this is little advanced. So here, this is nothing but a functional interface function. And what is it? So we are getting a role. So for every role, how to convert it into simple granted authority? What is the constructor argument I showed you? A role name. So anyone wants to tell me what should be the body of the lambda? Here, you have to convert the role instance to simple granted authority. And I've given you the constructor also of that simple granted authority. Let's see. New simple granted authority. Argument is wrong. Role is this thing. What is it called? Entity type role. So what you have to do? From the role, what is it you will have to get? We have a role class, guys. So you can't give role. You have to call role dot get role, which returns you the enum. And from enum, how do you extract the name? Dot name. I told you it is going to be little heavy. So here you are going to say convert it to new simple granted authority. And here you have a string role. So here, what is it you want to pass? You want to pass here the, what was it? Role dot get role, which returns you this thing. You can say that directly dot toString because toString returns you the name, or you can simply say name, whatever. So here you have got now stream of, you have mapped it. It's a, what is it called? Intermediate function. It's not a terminal operation yet. What is it I have got here? Anyone wants to tell me? With this mapper, what is it we have got? Stream of. Yes, it's the last day, Akshata. So just bear. And if it won't be hard if you have practiced the functional programming, functional streams programming, where I have given you sufficient practice. So of course, but I'll not say it is too easy. Granted. Okay. And then, so, but finally what I want is a collection. So here you have the collect operation. So dot collect. And all of this is already discussed in core Java. You have collectors and you can use the collectors dot to collection or to set or to list, anything. To list also is fine. So now you can breathe. Here. Take a complete minute here. Okay. I can say return directly. The whole idea about stream-based programming, functional programming is compaction of the code. No boilerplate code and all that. You take your minute. Okay, I'll send you first this. I hope I've not made any mistakes. If we have made a mistake, we'll have to debug. Giving you a minute and I'm going to revise this. And I think we are done here. Unless until there are some loose ends. So start. When you say user.get roles, you keep what you say responding, guys. I'm sure all of you are finding it lossy and lost and confused and all. So I'm recapturing. So here, when I say user.get roles, what does it return? Give me a message on the chat and give me a Java type, not an English answer. I want a proper answer. No. I told you I don't want English answer. I want proper Java answer. Okay, Ashutosh's answer I'll accept. Omkar, I did not say English, I said Java. Set of the generic type role. Perfect. Guys, you don't have to strain your brains. Here, just take it here and you know the answer. I'm just asking you without doing that. So here you have got, okay, we'll do it one more. So here, add one more. Comments make your life easy. They make you recall, they make you understand things. So what you got is, sorry, set of rule, which is internally a hash set. I mean, we have implemented as a hash set. Now, why did we suddenly convert it into stream of elements from the collection? Because I wanted to give the aggregate operations, mapping. Here it is only map, there's no filter. So map and reduce, I wanted to do, map and collect to be precise. So after I say stream, what are we doing? We are attaching. Do you remember core Java? I mean, not core Java as a general, functional programming in core Java, stream-based functional streams. So when you say collection has a memory-based whatever, but stream is stream of elements. So here we are converting it to stream of role. So tell me honestly, understood this much? So then I just have to explain the mapper function. Understood it completely? Now what is it I have got on one side? Stream of the role type. But what is the return type I need is the collection of granted authority. Okay, or anything which is a subtype in your own language, which is a correct one of a granted authority. But because granted authority is an interface, I can replace it by any implementation class. So which is the simplest implementation class of the granted authority? The name of the class is simple granted authority. Guys, that's why I asked you to look up the Java docs. But simple granted authority class, what is it taking? It is taking the name of the role. It is taking the role name. Understood this much? We have to return any collection. It could be a list, it could be set, it could be queue or whatever. Collection of the role names. Collection of simple granted authority holding the role names. So which is that functional API, which is the higher order function, which will do the conversion? Map. There's a flat map, but you don't require a flat map here. So now focus, now take the cursor on map. What is map taking? What is the input of a map? A functional interface whose name itself is function. And that function has a, single abstract method. And that method, what is it you are supposed to pass as the argument? The input. And that input will be mapped to the result. So this is your source type, and this is going to be your result type. So mapper is the function to map one type of a stream to other type. I'll talk in example. Suppose I give you, forget this complex example. Suppose I give you map of strings. I should not be wasting this time, but looking at your responses maybe. So suppose I've got strings as a collection. I converted into stream, so it is a stream of strings, and I want it as this. I want you to convert the string into their length. So what I want to see is the length of individual string. So anyone wants to tell me what will be the mapper function you will add to this higher order function? Because it is the same. Only thing is the API is a little heavy. I said convert the string into its length, integer. Which is the method you have? You have for every string, which is the method s.length. So now if I put my cursor here, what will I get? Will I get the stream of strings, or will I get a int stream, which is a stream of integer? Of course, I'll get an int stream. And once I get that, if you want to do average, or if you want to for each it and print it on whatever, you can do whatever you like. So this was your mapper function. So come back to the actual one. So what is it we are mapping? What is it we are converting? The role type, POJO or entity, to the simple granted authority. So this is the mapping. But now, if you say simple granted authority, it requires a name. So here, open our role POJO. Role has got a method. Role If you want to change the variable names, you change it to give you the clarity. So here I want to call a role.getRole returns me the enum. And the enum is a different type. So how do you get the names, constant names from enum? Two ways. Either you say toString or you say name. So now understand this. So just solve the inner one. What will this return? Quickly now, I'm spending more than whatever time on this. This will return what? The highlighted code. String or enum? Enum. And how do you get the enum name? Either say dot name or say toString. So guys, at the end of this particular line, what is it we are going to get? We have successfully mapped success or error we'll see, but okay, we have mapped stream of roles to stream of simple granted authority. But our job is not done. Here, if I get it, I'll get a stream. It's an intermediate function. So I want to return it as what? A collection. So what is the type of a collection? Simple granted authority. So you have a collect method. You can say either collectors dot toSet, toList, anything. I just choose a list. Got something out of it? Understood it better? Completely? Completely okay will be a tall thing, but okay, somewhat 5%, 10%. So I think we have done all the methods. So let's just take a quick look at the things, Control-Shift-W, and we'll test it. Oh, sorry, we can't test it. Our tables and all are empty. So we'll have to write the test cases. Yes, but before writing the test cases, we have time. Let's look at it. So the starting point where we start customizing Spring Security is security config. Open that. In the forget authorization. Authorization I already explained, like yesterday, today, and all that. So authentication you focus on. So here, the moment you are using user detail service, you are telling Spring Security Framework that use my customized, or to be precise, DAO-based authentication. So from here, control comes to, have I injected it properly? Yes, auto-wired it. So now, the control comes here. This is your interface. Spring supplied security interface having a single abstract method. Who has to implement this method? Us, programmer. So this is where we had started implementing custom user service. Understood that? I'm not at all saying this is easy. Of course, it is a step-by-step approach. You practice it well and then you'll find it easy. Okay. So now to tell that it is a business logic, service layer, then only you can auto-wire it. I'll repeat the statement. Guys, I wanted to auto-wire it in the security config. So I had to make it as a Spring component. So you can say add component, add transactional, but typically it is a service layer. So add service. But service is dependent on what? A user repository. User repository manages what? User entity, etc. So now here we are calling the method. If the username is found, great. User is loaded, great. Otherwise, we are using Spring Security exception to be thrown to that authentication manager, which will throw it back to the authentication filter, and the flow will be, it won't reach the dispatcher servlet. You will see what happens. The exception basically, error code. But if it comes below, that means you have found the user entity. There are valid user details. So now you have to return those user details as a in form of user details implementation class. So this is what was the last thing was. So here I'm creating custom user details. Am I going to require add component? I don't think we'll require it. Anyway, we'll check. If it doesn't work, we'll debug. So all I've passed is the user entity details lifted from the database. But does it include user details, roles details, both or neither? Answer is both. Because even in spite of many to many, because we have changed the fetch type to eager. So other than this, I hope everyone understood all other methods. So finally, I revised, so I'm not going to revise it again. We just got the roles from the user and mapped it to granted authorities and converted it to collection and sending it to the caller. Got it? Got some idea about the security framework? So like I told you, this is the figure. for the detailed security flow, which you can refer to all the time. Anyway, so now we can't test it immediately, guys, because when we run this application, our tables will be created. But will they be created? Which tables I'm talking about? Users table and the roles table and that intermediary table, that user role or whatever. But will they be what? Empty or non-empty? Of course, they will be empty. So we'll have to write the test cases. See, sometimes if there is a lot of time, I add another user service in the actual project. You can add that, and then we will add a method. Something like save user, save role. So your user table is populated, roles table is populated, and then we add a method, add user to the role. I'm thinking about it. Should I do it and show you? Okay, taken a decision. Instead of writing a test case, let us write a user service, which will help you in the project phase also. So, guys, don't confuse. This is your, wait a second. This is your security implementation class. But now let us identify our user service, which will add what? User, which will add role, and which will link the user to the role. I was going to anyway, I had to write it as a test case, might as well write it properly. So open our service layer and let's identify the other interface, our normal interface. It is user service. This is nothing to do with your Spring security. Not related to Spring security. Okay, so here, let's add this methods. So what I want to do is user entity. I want to add save. This will give you anyway a lot of practice in all the stuff. Then I'll have to add the role. So that will be returning a role. And then, okay, let me ask you, whenever we add these methods, where the entry, okay, I'll ask you one by one. I'm not sure how much you are understanding. When we write this method using that user repository where the record will be inserted, your choices are users table, roles table, user roles table, all of above, none of above, any of above. Only in users table. Security users table. Perfect. When I say add role, where the record will be added? Which roles we are talking about? Role user, role customer, role this thing, whatever. Where? In the, no, not in the join table. Join table is not there. Guys, we are talking many to many. So two parent tables and the join table is the child table. So entry won't be made in the join table. That is why you will have to link it. So here we will say, here I can say add role or link role or whatever. Link user role. Anyone wants to tell me? When I say link user role, what are the inputs? I can say any inputs, but you suggest the inputs. So now I want to say that this user, for example, Rama, I want to assign the admin user role. So after writing this particular method, where the entry will be added? In the users table, roles table, or the join table? Of course, the join table. And are you understanding this? And I'm not saying remove and all. If you want, you can add, like cancel the role. So here, anyone wants to tell me what arguments would you like to pass? So many options are there, but I want to hear your option quickly. You want to finish it fast. User and a role. Guys, okay, Sumit is closer, but I'm saying you have to give something unique. See, guys, finally it is going to come from the front end. Is your front end going to return you send you the user object and a role object? Think harder. Postman, I'm going to test it with. So what is it I'll get? User ID, role ID, I would have accepted, but I want a better answer. Yeah, exactly, user ID, but I said username and a role name. Okay, so let the username and the role name come from the front end, which is currently a postman. And here, I'm just checking. Yeah, and let this be map to, and we will do the hard work in the backend. So this is not really Spring Security. This is all your revision of JPA. So this should insert a record in the users table, one parent entry done. This should insert a record in the roles table, another parent table, record inserted. And this is where the insertion of a that joint this thing which has two primary keys. I mean, it's like a role ID and the user ID. So there the entry will be added. Understood or not? Like you suggested, I could have taken it as user ID and a role ID also. But here I'm saying it because it becomes more realistic. Finally, you want to attach it to your front-end React. So from front-end, you can pass a username, role name easily, more easily than your IDs. Okay, so now start writing. You don't require my help here. I hope you will not require my help. So here, this is our own user service. Let's implement a class. What is it called? User service implementation. This is our regular thing, which is the interface it is going to implement is I user service. Okay, start with the annotations. Let's finish it in a record time so that it doesn't, and we get so many things I still want to show you. So at service at transactional, my mistake, in a hurry. This is not the transactional annotation we want. We want everything from Spring Framework. Guys, don't make such a mistake. So please check the import list, otherwise the whole thing will fail. Add service, add transactional, both from OS, ORG Spring Framework. What is going to be the dependency? Anyone wants to tell me? What will be the dependency you will have to inject? Which dependencies? This is giving you a more project feel. It is we are building an entire backend. Only user repo? Exactly, Gaurav is right. User repo and role repo. Okay, so here, first let us start with the user repo. Because otherwise, where will you add that role and all? Role-based things are also we are having. And you one dependent can have multiple dependencies. Private role repository. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So write it quickly. Easy ones. Add save user, add role. Or okay, shall I rephrase it? Anyway, add role means don't add role. This we have a link role, different thing. Do this fast. Inherited API, finder methods, or custom queries. Tell me, how will you solve it? Inherited API. Which method you want to do? You want to insert the record. Which method? Save method. Continue fast. One liner. So user with our Spring Data JPA, bulk of the code is reduced. Save user. Okay. Next. Now, same thing here. We are adding a role. So just a second. Wait a second. I think I messed up. 2 minutes. Add role. Just a minute. So here, user entity is fine. I'm just checking whether the front end what it will send. Okay, we can have a JSON representation of it. Fine. I was just checking what will be easier. Role repo, not save, and role. Okay. There will be something wrong here. Yes. There is going to be a problem here. I'll come to that problem in a minute. Or okay, let's solve it. Here, who is going to call this method? Controller. But controller is going to get the data from where? It is going to get the data from the front end. So to be currently the postman. So now tell me, here front end will send you the password in a clear text. So are we keeping this password in a clear text form or an encoded form? Encoded. Are you getting me? And which encoder we have already created as a bean? Bcrypt encoder. So before you can say save, what are the things you will have to do? Guys, this is little tricky. It's not tricky, but yeah, it is important. So let's have a SOP in case it doesn't work. So here I'm saying save user. I'm printing the user details. So it won't have ID. Fine. Hibernate will generate. But it's active flag, guys. Here you got so many things. So which things can anyone tell me? ID is inherited field. So which fields will be given by the front end? I'll start asking you one by one, or you can yourself answer. Which fields will be supplied? You tell me. A username, of course, email, password, active flag, front end won't. We will set it to true. And this will be only the empty collection, which will start populating when we say add the user role or link user role. Are you understanding? That is, but the password which I'll get from the front end will be the clear text password. So we'll have to encode it here. That is what my statement was. That is what I realized. So we'll confirm it with this. So now start user dot set active flag to be true. So we are enabling the user account kind of a thing. And then we are saying user dot set password. What is the original password? Get password. So which is the bean we have added for password encoding? Under add bean is password encoder. So let me auto wire it into this password encoder. See the, what do you say? Control Shift O I just did. So see the auto wiring again. We have created that bean or configured that bean in the security configuration class. It is available to my entire application context. So whichever class requires it, I can just inject. So naturally what it will be, that encoder has the encoder method. You remember I had shown you that in the in-memory authentication, and user dot get password. Okay. So here we are actually registering the user. So what is it we are having here is the user registration. Okay, this is done. This is adding the roles. So role wise, I don't think we have to do anything. Okay, so here I'll give you a minute. This is your practice of actual backend project development. You give me the code. I told you what I want. With this, user record gets inserted. Here, role record gets inserted. Here, that entry in the join table. I'm waiting for a minute and maybe we'll stop after this and we'll resume after the break. I'll tell you what you can do in the break and keep it ready. Anyway, you just tell me. I hope everyone understands. I'm looking for the code in here. This is your practice of handling many-to-many association between entities. Are you trying or are you lost? Tell me frankly, last day, and throughout I was never judging you. Okay, trying. So I'll give you time. Don't worry. Another minute and I'll start writing. Whole day it is going to be like this. I mean, not so much of coding, ready-made demos later. Let's see what she's saying. Find by username, find by role. Perfect beginning. Continue. Oh, you have said the other thing also. You dot. Okay, this one, first two lines are correct. Find by username, excellent. Find by role name, excellent. You dot set role, there is a problem. What is that role? I'll give you a clue. What is the type of the role property? Tell me. It's a set. So what is it? You want to add a new role. So what is it you will have to do? That is the only mistake. First two lines are perfect. Yes. You dot get roles or whatever dot add the new role. Are you understanding? User may be having an admin role already and you are adding a customer role to it. Or if it is an empty collection, you are adding a role. So other than the first two statements are perfectly all right. Let me finish with everyone. First is get user by from username. Are you understanding this, guys? So user entity. Okay, I'll write in lines and simply get role from role name. Because from front end, a role name can come. Actually, a enum also can come. It can get converted into enum. Anyway, let's keep it simple. So you can always do that. And then link the role, or you can say add the role user. Okay. So tell me, do you want to try it out on your own in the break? Okay, in the break or this, do you want to give it a try yourself? Quickly tell me yes or no. If you say no, I will write it in a minute or whatever. Tell me frankly, fast. You want to try? Nobody's responding. So I think I should not let you try. I should do it. So do it with me. So user entity, user. This we had already done in that custom user service, right? So this is or else throw. Of course, here we don't have a security exception. So or else throw, we will just have a runtime exception. So message. This is a registration process. I hope you are understanding. The endpoint to which we will be writing is /API/ sign in. Sorry, sign up. So this is your user entity. Did I mistake something? Find by username. Okay, so this is done. The first one, no, username is not there. This is a problem. Okay, so this is done. Now, similarly, do the second thing, role. Report dot. Oh, we don't have a finder. So add a finder here. So role repository, add a finder. Optional. Role. Find by. Open that role Pojo. Otherwise, you'll make mistake. The name of this is user role. So it is going to give me the user role. Anyway, we'll see. So find by role. And the type here will be user role. I thought as such. So okay. So this is your method. Now let's come back to this here. And here I'm just checking. Can my Spring container do the parsing? Yes. So please change it to not role name, user role itself. Your container will do the parsing. And of course, you'll have to change it in the interface. I'm trying to make it easier, not more complicated. As it is complex. So user is fine. Okay. And here, let me save this. Right. So let us one reduction. So role repo dot find by role, and I can supply the role. And here this part is the same. Role not found. Oh, I've got a multiple this problem here. Find by user roles. Variable ambiguity. Okay. If I come here, what does it imply? User and role found. Correct? So here you just have to link the two. So all I have to say is user dot get roles dot add a user role. And since it is all done in a transactional context manner, have I said a transactional yes, and I can say added, or I can say linked role. I'm going to share all of this done so far. So got anything or not completely lost? This is not unfortunately the part of Spring Security. This is a complete revision of your handling many-to-many association. Understood anything or lost? Quickly, I'm stopping you right away. So don't worry. I need some answer, some response, guys, in between. Okay. So which part you did not understand? You yourself had told me this, the first two part. Here, you forgot that it's not a single, what do you say, single element, it's a collection. Anyway, let me not stretch this session too much. Try this out. I'm sending you the whole project zip. And if you have the energy or if you get time in the break, we are starting only after 1 hour, you can write a test case. Okay. You can write a test case for the service layer and test save user, add role and link user role and tell me if it worked. It is completely optional, but if you manage it, you'll have a practice of Spring Boot testing also. That was that is my statement. So let me give you this and stop right away. So here is the complete project done so far, but we have not debugged it yet. I mean, we have not tested it yet. So this one. Okay. So I've sent you this. Download it. You got this project so that wherever, if in between you could not complete a particular thing, you should have no problem here. This is more about JPA. This is more about your service and allow layer. So that will be all. Try going through it. Whichever part you did not understand, tell me frankly after the break, and I'll explain that and we'll test it. So this will give you the user registration part. You know, user registered with certain roles and all that. And then we'll proceed to authentication, which the code is already written. We'll test it. And then we will proceed to core Java remaining topics. So we will start at 11:20. So be there in time so you don't miss any of the revision. That will be all. See you around.